Welcome and welcome back to Authentic Lourdes on Air podcast. It is time, drum roll, to introduce you to Veronica, this beautiful queen that literally, like, the way she be, I just appreciate. I met her all the way back in 2021, Brazil. We were at a retreat called Unearthed, and it was about reuniting and connecting and bringing that recalibration to your feminine embodiment, right? These two polarities we hold within us, the masculine and the feminine, and we were retuning in since so much of culture has been more pushing the masculine, right? It was time to like recalibrate. And that's where I met this queen. And so I'm going to let her introduce herself to you for a moment before I start asking her some questions. But I'm so thrilled to see her because it's been a really hot minute.
It has. When we were chatting before, I was saying like, it feels like lifetimes. It feels like there's been a couple of different evolutions since that time, and the integration that we're having still from that experience in Brazil is so potent. So I love you so much, sister. Thank you for reaching out. I'm really grateful to be here with you. And as you're saying, I'm Veronica. My name is Veronica Paige, and my North right now and for the past almost 10, 15 years has been through the lens of Ayurveda, which we'll talk about. And in general, it's holism. So I'm here to chat about holism and how we can embody what that actually feels like. Like, how can we embody being a whole being when life in itself is inherently intense, extremely sensational, and we have to naturally dissociate sometimes because it is so much. So how can we come into a body that experiences this whole life and do so like in right relations with ourselves, with all beings everywhere, and essentially achieve our goals, right? It's kind of a lot, but hey, we're here for it. We expand our capacity to hold it. So that's why I'm here.
Amen. And I love that. And I don't want to skip or gloss over that. We expand our capacity to hold it. Like,
Yeah.
if we look at ourselves as containers, this is something that I've been learning so much over the years. And this woman has witnessed me in some of this stretching and growing my capacity to hold more, because I'm asked often, people are like, how do you hold space for people? And that's a subject for another time, but part of that is that process in general of actually expanding my own capacity, allowing my container to be like really like for us, right? To be in this locked up, sealed up, really well constructed so that it could do the right thing. You're saying the right thing. I'm like, it's to hold. Like, we get to hold the water. We get to hold, and also not keep it inside of us. But yeah, something I really want to ask you, woman, is a little bit about your background story, about you and your relationship to health, because clearly this is what we're talking about. And I want to give a really brief overview of health, the way I define it, talking again about what's right and what like is this thing is, I keep seeing balance serves us so much. And I know this is a thing that you preach on. It's like bringing things back into that slight counterbalance. It's this dynamic homeostasis. Nothing's ever meant to like stay like this, it'd be dead, right? But that dynamic homeostasis is what a lot of people consider right, or like health. We're looking to return back from this imbalance to this like counterbalance. And so I just preface your story with this, because I can tell your story is a massive return to this for you.
You got it. You got it. Thank you for that. Bringing in the fact that this is about health. And the definition of health actually hasn't been really properly, I feel like, defined in the West. But what I've found in Ayurveda, which for anyone who doesn't know, Ayurveda is I'm not going to say ancient, but it is the oldest form of holistic healthcare. It's a full living, breathing healthcare system that is still practiced today. I'm not going to say ancient because to me, ancient has the connotation that it's dead, and it's very much still alive. And it is the main healthcare system of many countries, of course, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and it's legal in places like Dubai as a healthcare system. So yes, it is the oldest recorded form, and it's been practiced for many years, thousands of years before the recorded form, which was about 4,000 to 5,000 years ago when we found I say we, me, and the humans have found the recorded texts. So in Ayurveda, there is the definition that health will mean like the absence of suffering, the absence of disease. So when there's no disease, then I can experience health. And when there's no disease, I can experience life to the fullest. When there's no disease, I can achieve my life goals. Dharmartha kama mokshanam arogyam mulam uttamam rogastasya paratara shreyaso jivatasya cha. Which means, and I'm not a Sanskrit scholar. If anyone is a Sanskrit scholar, hit me up and we can have lessons together because I'm still in my studies forever. But the best and ultimate way to achieve one's life goals is the complete absence of disease. And that which eradicates disease is the mode for the best possible life. And the human life goals is something we'll get into later, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So tabbing that, what are the goals of a human life after we can achieve health? And so I speak to that because throughout life, for most of my life, I was like, just, living off of the enjoyment of sensation, right? I see this is fun. I feel this is nice. I taste that, that's great. Like I smell that, this season is nice, whatever. I have a partner or I don't have a partner. I have friends, like living this day to day without a greater scope, lens of the whole and how I fit into this beautiful web within it until the health comes in and says, let's go. We got to find our purpose. So you're going on the wrong path. And the health for me, I was born with chronic eczema. I had 5 years of loss of a menstrual cycle, probably due to being on birth control for like way too early. I didn't have any education around that. I am of mixed origin. My father's side, my family is Otomi, Chichimeca, and Pátzcuaro from Mexico, indigenous Mexican. And then there's some family in Italy. My mom is Filipino from, way back. We have some, Spanish ancestry as well, of course, right? So the colonizer and the oppressed are within me and all of us. So I have found in this process of like emerging from the eczema, from the loss of a bleed, so not being able to let go and cleanse every month for 5 years, there was this discussion, this like, who am I? Who am I and what am I here to do, be, express? How am I expressing? Okay, I have this sense of not being able to speak my truth, not being able to express what I need. We can go into nervous system response of, being I believe it's very deep in my ancestry to fawn. And a lot of women have the trauma response of fawning, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or appease, which is essentially bracing against your truth and then stepping into the performer, right? People can call it people pleasing. It's mixed in there. So this was a big part of me learning, okay, I want to rip my skin off, right? Like with this eczema, so painful. There's a part of me that just, I don't want to be in this body. Who am I? And so with this journey, my skin saying, hey, you got to completely change your life, who you be, how you express, how you eat, watch how you consume, what's your relationship to your body, to your plate, then things started to open up, right? I did yoga. I saw myself, looked at myself every day, almost every day for a full year. And then finally one day I was like, oh shit, who are you talking to in there? Like, why are you so mean to yourself? I want to do this. I want to do X, Y, Z. You look like that. Leaving the class wanting to, again, scratch my skin off. So there is so much telling me that there's another conversation that gets to be had. with myself, with what's on my plate, with who's in the mirror, and with all beings everywhere. So I looked into, I did like acupuncture. I studied traditional Chinese medicine, specifically like briefly for the meridian system. So I did yoga teacher trainings that also supported acupressure. So if anyone knows Rose Erin Vanguard, she's epic. She's in New York. So I did trainings with her, Science of Self, so I could learn the meridian yogas. Okay, the liver gallbladder pathway, hold into it, breathe into it, where can I press onto it? Ear acupuncture, liver detoxification, stomach detoxification, everything that you can detox the body through the ears, and ear acupuncture. So I studied this. I did some volunteer work in New York so I could be with the people who are using, and the homeless people who, like, we're here just trying to survive, and if we can be held, then maybe we can make a different step forward. So I started to get better with traditional Chinese medicine, and I still love it. It's great. It really is. And there wasn't even the thought, like, do I want to become a traditional Chinese medicine doctor? It wasn't there. But instead, I was asking the doctor, like, I need more herbs, or like, what do I need to do? We've reached a plateau with my skin. Wow. And I still hadn't gotten my cycle. So he said, okay, stop, let's pause and then come back to it. And then, like, I got kind of better, but it was still at a plateau. And if anyone has been at that place, it's like kind of coasting, and you go back into these old habits, these old patterns, when life inherently gets sensational again. Something happens, you have a breakup, you move, you're trying to change careers, and then boom, all the things to help numb and suppress that intensity starts to happen again. Binge eating, trigger warning, speaking on, I was bulimic for 3 years. So these kinds of things to help numb and then disperse that energy starts to happen, then perpetuates the sickness again.
I have a question for you.
Go for it.
When did your bleed stop?
It stopped when I stopped topical steroids and birth control. So then there was a whole 3 years of deep inflammation and grasping for the things that I was using for so long, right? So the body was essentially traumatized from my skin being so erupted, and there wasn't enough access to the energy to push the bleed down and out, because everything is getting pushed out through the sides skin, right? So there are different channels of the body to detox. Everything's trying to go out the skin because the liver is so taxed because of everything that's been put in the body. Years of eating cheese. I love cheese. Cheese is fine. But like cold cheese, blocks of cheese every week, as a child, when your microbiome and your tissues are being built, and now they're being built off of chicken strips, French fries, and blocks of cheese and tortillas. So that was, how my body was built. And then I packed on the steroids, packed on the birth control once I just stopped that cold turkey, which isn't like highly recommended. Ayurveda doesn't recommend cold turkey for anything. We gradually decrease. But I did that because I was like, hey, I'm going to travel, and I don't have access to these things anyways. And then the travel itself would then heighten all the symptoms and push whatever pathology is in the koshta, which is the GIT, whatever pathology is in the GIT, whether it's from latent waste or pollutants or stress, all the things will be sped up by great increase when we travel, because vata increases. And we could talk about the doshas if we want to, but vata being like movement, right?
Air,
sporadic,
right? Is it
energy.
The air element?
Air and space.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah. So that's when it got my cycle stopped. Took several years. I found Ayurveda, and Ayurveda, my introduction to it was from this new age lens, which, much love to the new age community. I would say I'm still like recovering from that, in the sense that, what I see as new age is we pick and choose the things that we like, and then we leave the rest. So inherently it's not whole. It's not holism, right? And Ayurveda, you can't pick and choose, because then the sum does not equate to just certain parts. If I want to do this and then this and then this, it's not going to, the end goal product is not going to be the same. So
this is interesting you're saying this because a lot of people throw that word around, and I don't, that word to me, I don't really even like, I get it. It's a group of people, I would say, that identify in this way. I don't identify in this way either. But I do get lumped into that all the time, and that's okay. You know, it is what it is. Call me whatever you want, right? Like, it's like, having said that, I love that you're saying this because it's like, it's ways of thinking, right? And so here you are looking for ways to approach life and connect more to health overall, to being healthy, to being whole. And I guess maybe this is why I identify often as like being in the self-help community, I guess. You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
it's just funny, but yeah, looking for this beautiful connection of who we are and how we get to express. So thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful. And I'm imagining too, there are many people who I guess would call themselves New Age, right? And also practice Ayurvedic practices. I know Christians who practice Ayurvedic practices. Yeah. And so obviously Muslim people, many people, it's beautiful. However people choose to identify, I get it. So yeah, that's super helpful.
Yeah, I'm glad that you named that. There's nothing, like I said, nothing wrong with it. I would consider myself in part in the New Age community because I am still learning about my ancestral roots, and I honor other lineages deeply. And I think if you're working on like a chronic illness and you're looking for a healthcare system to support something deep, a deep pathology that you've been working with, then New Age Ayurveda is not going to be for you. If you're like generally very healthy, you're pooping once, 2 times a day, you wake up, you're feeling energized, you don't have gook in your eyes, you're not feeling heavy, you sleep before 10, you work out like at least 5 times a week.
Let's just touch that for, you just said you don't have gook in your eyes. That's interesting you say that, because when I was younger, I always did. And as I've gotten older, that doesn't happen unless I'm sick. So I don't know how many people actually associate that with being a part of something that's balanced in their body. Health, again, this word health, balancing happens, and you're not having sleep in your eyes and like all these other things that you think are normal, except they don't have to be. This is your body speaking to you. So thank you. Yeah, this is awesome.
Exactly. This is what Ayurveda is learning the language of the body that's trying to speak to you through symptoms. We're trying to realize the most unconscious parts of us, our organs and our cells, the most unconscious parts connected to our most conscious parts, the different senses, right? So the external organs and the internal organs, how can we connect them through a communicative language that I can understand, right? So how can I understand the language of my most unconscious parts? Signs and symptoms, right? So that's what Ayurveda is achieving, is how can I read signs and symptoms? Gook in my eyes, what's that telling me? Okay, what did I eat last night? What did I eat this past night? What time did I sleep? Have I been sleeping well in general? Have I been working out? Do I have even a bowel movement? Like, is there a way that I can tell if I'm building up waste, metabolic waste, and it's trying to come out in a certain way? What color is it? Is it clear? Is it white? Is it yellow? It's going to tell me different things about what's happening inside. And our job, and kind of going into like, how have I used this practice? How do I use this practice now? Our job is to get curious. So that's why I didn't end up going down the TCM route, which again, I love traditional Chinese medicine, shout it out. Like, I love it. Dr. Chen in New York. If you need someone, go to him. Fantastic. And Ayurveda presented a level of responsibility, a deep level of responsibility. Hey, what am I experiencing in my body? Can I verbalize it? Remember, I said, like, I can't speak. The eczema here was so intense, and feeling constriction in the back of my throat oftentimes when I went to a room. People call it social anxiety. Like, yeah, sure, it's social anxiety. And like, what am I bracing against? So connected with autoimmune, I have to say, thyroid. And this runs in my family. Again, we can talk about epigenetics too. That's also very much involved in Ayurveda.
I want
So,
to touch something here for a second. This is
mhm,
interesting because I've noticed a lot of people identifying themselves as, I have an
mm,
autoimmune disease. And
mm,
they identify with it so hardcore, I don't think they even realize.
yeah,
And so I love that you just said this because, again, people identify themselves with the, oh, I have social anxiety and all this. And I get it. I'm not trying to say this, take it lightly by putting air quotes.
totally.
I'm putting quotes around it. Having said that, there's more we get to tune into often than we realize. And that's why I
Yeah,
love that you keep saying the word and.
yeah,
This is true. And
mm,
there is more details to this to look into. And as an individual, I have the responsibility to look into these details. I get to be my own nurse, my own doctor, I get to bring the curiosity. I am the mad scientist. And if I
mm,
don't do that, I will pay for it.
mhm,
Right? So yeah, this is just, this is rich.
yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that you're naming how important that is to notice if I am locked in to an identity.
Yeah.
Is that actually gonna help me get better? Because we all know the science of feeling stressed perpetuating the sickness. So if I'm identifying with the thyroid, if I'm identifying with my eczema like that, then I is it serving me? Maybe it is. For me, when I moved into, okay, Ayurveda, I was like, okay, now I get to learn the language of my body. I have to get curious. This means I'm going to get uncomfortable. If you want to practice this, like if you want holistic healing, like that means the entire spectrum of emotions and the entire depths of who you be. The trauma, the issues are in the tissues, right? They say it literally is lodged in our fat tissues. And what's very fat? Our liver. When we start to detox, it will come up and out, and things that we might not have felt or experienced for years will emerge. And that goes really deep into like panchakarma, which we could talk about as well.
What does
Um,
this word mean? The
yeah,
Sanskrit word mean?
yeah. So pancha is 5, and karma is any action on or act post, right? So if I'm doing an action on the 5 cleansing systems, there's 5. So there are 5 actions. What are the 5 actions of a detox protocol, which specifically this is in Ayurveda? So the 5 would be there's basti. So this is going to be like an enema, 2 types of basti there that one is nourishing with oil, one is going to be with like a medicated kshaya, medicated formula. So it's more cleansing, and then the other one's nourishing. And then there's Varechana, of course, which is out the anus, and that's going to be like mostly a pitta cleanse. We can think of these all as like,
Elemental fire.
yes, thank you. Fire and water.
Beautiful.
So fire and water and pitta. And Varechana is essentially what the West needs in a big way. And it's the safest way. That's actually not true. It can have a lot of complications, but it's the only one that we would be able to do if we were getting the proper support from an Ayurvedic doctor, like at home, and you weren't going to go all the way to India. So it's the safest to do at home if you have support, if you have the mental fortitude and the physical capacity, because it is taxing. So please do not go search how to do Varechana online. This is not recommended by any means. You could die. All of these, there are serious needs in terms of like emergency connection, because this is surgery without the knife. This is really surgery without cutting you open. It's through internal medicine. And
This
how
is
are we?
very powerful. This is surgery without the knife.
Yeah, 100%. So it's not to be
Super clear.
toyed with. Yeah, not to be
It's
played
not to
with. So there's Varechana, Basti, Varechana. Then there's Vamana. So this is outward route out the mouth. And then there is Raktamokshana, bloodletting. So this is exactly what you think it is. Usually it's done with leeches, actually. And it's the safest, most gentle way. And the leeches are treated so well; they are very happy. And then there's nasya. So this is going to be out the nose, in the nose, and then out the mouth. Sorry, and sometimes out the nose, but usually it's, and then it's all the different orifices of the body. So
And
it's a real healthcare system.
that's this is so helpful to understand. Also, what does the word Sanskrit mean? The Sanskrit word for Ayurveda.
Yeah, so good. So Ayurveda is the science of how to live a life, right?
Oh,
So Ayu is lifespan and or span, and Veda is like life. So the science of how to live a life. Ayu is the science of lifespan. Veda would be life. So if we're talking about the science of how to live a life, it also means Ayurveda has the science of how not to live, or how to live a life of contentment or discontentment.
okay.
There's the shloka to define it is hita hitam sukham dukham ayustasya hita hitam manam chat cha cha yarukdam sauchite, which is like all things that create harmony, all things that create disharmony, all things that create contentment, discontentment, wholesomeness for you, for not, for you, and then for me, very different. What is wholesome, what's unwholesome, can all be understood and measured. It can be measured. How? Qualities, qualities, heaviness, lightness, hot, cold, right?
Temperature,
Liquidy,
yeah,
all
the
these things.
pressure points, feeling pressure, feeling, yeah, the release. Yeah, very, very beautiful. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
for explaining that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this is where we're at. I said yes because I want the responsibility of figuring out what qualities do I embody and do I want to keep them? What are the qualities externally and can I borrow them with reverence? Right?
Mm.
I'm every time I have something on my plate in my cup, I am going to borrow those qualities. So then I was like, okay, there's something here. There's now something to chew on, which has been my Dr. Jessica Villela, who's also my mentor, and I learned from her for several years. Jessica Villela is fantastic, first woman, born American woman to achieve Bachelor of Ayurvedic Medicine and Surgery in India. She's badass, this woman. Um, so she has told me, like, okay, Veronica, you need to chew on something other than food because this was the root of my skin issues, and even like PCOS, overconsumption, which is again a chronic disease of the West. Too much of everything. Eating past, being hungry. And again, this is can be very sensitive, right? If we're working with some sort of relationship with food that's challenging, I get that. It can be really hard to hear. So this isn't for everyone. Some people eat too little, and that's another relationship, right? Um, but for me, in my instance, and for a lot of people, it's the binging, the overeating, and I needed to chew on something else. And the science of Ayurveda, the science of how to live a life, was what felt right for me to chew on. So in chewing on that, in studying, in focusing, in directing my manas, my mind, my whole day into chewing on something that was important to me, was a huge pillar of my healing. So if anyone is dealing with something that's food
Wow.
related, ask yourself, like, what do you want to chew on? Like, really?
Oh my God, woman, this is so rich. I also dealt with binge eating disorder. I moved
Mhm.
through that. I don't want to say the word dealt with. I moved through that. That was
Mhm.
uncomfortable. And I wanted to make sure to touch on this point where you speak of being in the discomfort. And to me, that I call it over and over again the zone of magic. That's where the magic happens, in the discomfort. I have a gene key that is super helpful to me. It's under the title of being in my life's work.
Mhm.
And that is, I touch stone to, or, oh God, which one is this? Is it my life's work? I think so. I touch stone to the unease.
Mm.
It is my life's work. I touch unease. They call it in the Gene Keys study, the shadow.
Mm.
Call it whatever you want, but I touch it. When I touch the unease, the discomfort, the dis-ease, the imbalance, something feels off. I then get to shift gears. I touch that. I remember that. I'm like, oh, super helpful, super helpful. I go into the intuition. And to me, that is my five senses tapped into, tuned into, extended and expanded. And when I'm in that, I receive clarity, the embodiment that Gene Key speaks of is that, and how interesting that that is definitely a big part of my life's work that I do with people. I bring clarity. I help intimately see what it is that we get to see about ourselves so that we can really be in our sovereignty, be the queen and king and the beautiful royalty that you are, and bring that energy to the empire you're ruling, because our rulership is we're helping guide. A ruler is a literal ruler, right? That we take out and we use to measure. It helps us guide. And so we use that to help us. And so as we rule our empires, right? Our realms, the orbit that people are in our orbit, we get to help support with that rulership. And so it's really beautiful. We get to help guide one another, but we have to learn to guide ourselves first. And so this is just so rich that you're talking about being in that discomfort and being in that, the things that don't look pretty. And let's be real, it's messy and it doesn't look pretty, but how beautiful that you bring to it this message of like, what do I get to chew on that supports me? Like, I'm so interested and it's the beginning part of your healing process. That's rich shit right there. I'm like, that's thousands of dollars being dropped right here, right now of information to help your healing journey. Get onto, what do I get to chew? What is my dieta? What is my diet? What am I consuming in all the realms? But especially now when I get to refocus, let's say I have a really intense dis-ease. You spoke about, disease, and I sometimes feel like we say that word too quickly. Dis-ease. We're designed to touch stone to dis-ease. And then how do we bring that back into ease? And you're touching it. You're speaking to this whole way of living. And this one gem that you're dropping, I'm just like, oh my God, this is so rich. I don't want to pass it up. It's too rich. So again, what you're speaking to, I don't want to lose track of this. What you're sharing with us is this like a beautiful gateway to stepping into your health.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. So powerful to be okay with the discomfort. And if we can look at it as, again, a sign that something wants to be felt, something needs some attention. So I really appreciate that this is such a pillar for you, because I think the moment we can thank pain, not to glorify it by any means, but to realize that pain is there for a loving, 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 loving purpose for us. Like people who are born, I forgot the name of that disease, they won't make it because we need signals. And so what a power to be able to learn how to read and find the ease within pain. There was I was just in India, right, for the first time actually, and one of the patients there that I was tending to, I'm not a doctor, but I'm there as a support, as a coach, because I understand the pathway that this disease is going, and I understand the protocol that the doctor is prescribing. So I basically carry out the support needed for someone to do these Ayurvedic protocols, which can be very intense. Stop eating this, stop doing this, and it can be very rigid. And it can be like, well, what the heck? Like, I can't do that. So why can't I do that? Right? That why, I will help bridge that gap. And it's usually through somatic inquiry. And it's also through like time and care and understanding the language. Because again, like, what does panchakarma mean? Or like, what does snehapana mean?
Yeah, it's like going to yoga class and you're like, what the heck?
Right. So
doing what now?
Exactly. which is fair. There's a whole universe inside of there. So the
You
pain, go
also
ahead.
said, oh, that's what you said. Somatic, what did you call it? Somatic
Somatic inquiry.
inquiry. Can you give us a definition of this?
Yeah. So my teacher, and I've had a few teachers in somatic inquiry, but I have to highlight Luis Mojica, who is an incredible somatic therapist. And the practice of somatic inquiry is how can we tap into the parts that are discomfort, like feel discomfort, and the parts of pleasure, and recognize what that's trying to tell me, navigate me through. For example, you said this is a very painful process, or this is a challenging process for me. Discomfort, right? Okay, I'm feeling discomfort, I'm feeling dis-ease. Somatic inquiry is getting curious about the actual sensations that I'm experiencing in my body, from expansion to contraction to numbness to tingling to temperatures. How can I listen to those, actually feel them, not just understand them cognitively, but take time to be with them in the action of being with them? What emerges? If I
Take
am with the
time to be with them.
it's really slowing life down, because trauma is inherently, the experience of trauma is fast, right? The mind and the body has to
Too fast, too fast, too soon.
move things fast, right? Because if I experience quickness, then I can contract, and that's a protective mechanism. So if my body is constantly in a sense of contraction for whatever reason, then the inquiry, if it's available, which means if the inquiry is available, you're inherently not in a trauma, like a dangerous situation. If I have the time, the space to inquire, then I'm not going to actually get hit by the car, right? But I need to like brace or do whatever, or fight or push or whatever, if I'm in a traumatizing or dangerous situation, rather. So somatic inquiry is recognizing that, okay, maybe I can make space from the thing that's causing contraction and get curious about what information is there. So how this blends into Ayurveda so beautifully is, for example, binge eating. Why is it so hard for me to create space from eating that food? What a big practice that we have in my program, in my process, is we practice before and outside of the moments where I want to binge eat, right? Not when the action, when I'm feeling the constriction, when I'm essentially feeling traumatized because maybe I'm overwhelmed in life. I just lost my job, or I just got really bad news, and I have a deadline, and whatever my bills are due. So like all of that's happening at once. Now I'm going to go eat 5 brownies for sure, and the tub of ice cream, because all of that intense overwhelm, I do not have the capacity to hold right now. However, maybe tomorrow morning, or maybe the morning before, I practiced what happens when I'm faced with 5 brownies and a tub of ice cream.
Yeah.
What happens in my body? Tingles in my inner thighs, constriction in the throat, a push forward. Like, can I actually bring that to the front of mind and somatically experience that, and be with the constriction, the expansion, the heat, all of that, right? There are practices to do that safely. And when I'm then actually faced with it in person, right, it's happening,
So it
then
sounds
I'm
like
more capacity.
you're preparing people in training. You're literally training them to then like re-prepare our pathways. Our neural pathways are they're re creating new pathways.
We're expanding our capacity
Beautiful.
for when that actually happens. Then I can, cognitively, I know that I practice this, and somatically, in an embodiment, like have embodied making space from me in that brownie. There's a pathway there, but if I haven't practiced it, then of course I'm going to freaking eat them all. What? Come on. This is our first form of safety, is sweet, breast milk. After the most traumatizing, most powerful thing, life, death, and sex, the most powerful things we can do with our body, the first thing you get is sweet, creamy, warm, nourishing breast milk. Of course, our DNA is going to want sweet. Sweet is safe. Sweet is safe.
Ooh, that's powerful. Thank you for that background to what it is that serves us from the beginning. So
Right.
that's powerful.
Yeah.
Wow. This is so rich hearing your experience and how you've moved through it. And I don't want to take away from if you had a train of thought already where you were going somewhere with this.
We're
Um,
dancing.
Cool, great. I love it because I would love to hear a little more about your experience in India. You touched it with us, but what do you feel are some of the highlights that you came away with? Like just that I mean everything from your enjoying the experience
Yeah.
to because tapping into our pleasure is I think one of the richest things we could do. I find that pleasure is more of that counterbalance. I find that that's how you actually reach that thing of satisfaction. People tell us, "Oh, be careful, going down the path of pleasure is going to sink you down." And I'm like,
Mm.
going down the path of what people think of in their mind as discipline and what they think of as pleasure are imbalances. You can create the imbalance of both of those because that word discipline means to be the disciple, to be the pupil. It's one of the sexiest things we could do in this life experience. Be curious, like you said, bring in the curiosity. That is how we bring discipline. So for me, that doesn't mean going to the gym every day like a motherfucker and destroying my body. It means being a discipline. I am actually tuning in with my intuition, with my five senses. What serves my body in this moment? I'm like, oh, I love going to exercise. And it doesn't happen every day because my body tells me, we're not doing that today. And I'm like, oh, beautiful. Okay, I get a break. Or this day, maybe we just go and swim softly and lightly and hop in the jacuzzi, right? Like that is pleasure. That is the definition of pleasure, is to be in the thing that is actually, it can be satisfied. It's only designed to be satisfied for a moment, right? Satiated in a moment, so that we could continue to return to this beautiful place emotionally of being in peace. Like you said, either being in discontent or the contentment. And the contentment is like, it's a sister, right, of peace, being in the energy of peace. Because from that place, I could shoot up into the happy and into the joy, into the bliss and all the craziness. And then I could be in the sadness when it's time for me to be sad about something. It's an exorcism, right? It will come out of me. It gets just like you were saying, like the way we vomit, or are we actually, actually going to the bathroom, in any way? Do we have sleep in our eyes? These are exorcisms, things coming out of us so that we can understand more and more about what's being communicated. Funny enough, I call it an exorcism as well. It's like, these are messengers of God. It's your emotions, your feelings. They're tuning in. They're giving us information. The sleep in your eyes are offering you information.
Powerful.
It's like, it doesn't have to be the scary thing that we try to, there's a lot of fear, right? We came here to transmute fear. And I find a gateway to that is actually tuning into pleasure, tuning into your intuition, to your five senses, and allowing your body to inform you of what is going on. And again, you don't want anything to lead the show. It's like your mind is also receiving this information and they're dancing together. They're balancing out, right? Like our ego is here to remind us that it's a guard dog. It's like bark, 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 bark. And then we get to remind it. Our heart reminds it like, oh my God, I love you. Everything's okay. I tuned in. I checked in. We're okay. So we get to move forward, it's a beautiful dance. Like you said, it's a literal dance.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I'm going to tune into the question that you asked about like the highlights in India. And I also want to touch on the pleasure that you're saying, because I really appreciate you recognizing that, hey, what is our definition of pleasure? How do I see pleasure? What's my relationship to pleasure? Ayurveda and somatic inquiry is all about relationships, and relationships is everything. Life is simply our relationship to my perspective onto something, how and I perceive this relationship, and how I'm experiencing it in my body. And so pleasure, like what's my relationship to pleasure? Does pleasure only mean when I have a 90-minute massage and then I walk on the beach and I have someone kissing my neck and I'm getting a glass of champagne? Like if that's the definition of pleasure, whatever your Kavaigunya
And
is, which
that's
is
great, but that's very limited. That's a limited,
exactly.
it could be that, but it could be so much more.
Exactly, exactly. So if that's the only summit that I can achieve, then inherently, because life is whole, then there will only be a few times, perhaps, maybe not. I don't know. But from an Ayurvedic standpoint, that will lead to our Kavaigunya, which is like our weak spot, because we are whole. And you can't get away from the fact that we are all the elements. We are water, we are earth, we are fire, we are air, we are space, and all of that dances together. So if I have a small definition of what pleasure is and I'm leaving everything else out, then over time it just won't be sustainable, which is where we are in this world. And so if I can look at my relationship to pleasure, then, like you said, I can really open up and expand my experience of life. And that is what I'll take, come to what I've really learned and taking away from this experience in India is the deep practice of what somatic inquiry has really brought through, which is expanding the capacity for pleasure. And that doesn't mean I'm having the wine or I'm walking on the beach. No, I did none of those things. I didn't even see the ocean. I saw the ocean on the way back from the facility. Like it was great. And my capacity for pleasure in sitting with the people who are going with treatment, in sitting with the waiting in between 26 bowel movements in 9 hours, because I was doing Videchana, like the pleasure in the wait,
Wow.
dude. Yeah. The pleasure in a book, the pleasure in the texture of this book versus that book. And so there was a lot of what I'm receiving from that is slowness, slowing down to experience sensationally life itself. And how long can I be with that pleasure? And if it's a short amount of time, that's fine. One practice similar to the food, like, inquiring, okay, what if a brownie is right in front of me? What happens to my body? We can do the same thing with pleasure. If I can sit with the warmth of this cup and I'm just feeling the warmth of, ooh, tingles, pleasures, actually my belly, my back body, I can feel it. Okay, there's energy moving back up my spine. And then all of a sudden I think about, bills, or I think of this, oh, I reached my capacity for pleasure. It was I literally met it and it shifted. So the practice of pleasure was really huge. And
I want to share something here super brief, and it's to do with tantra, right? Because we hear this word often, we forget this word in Sanskrit means to weave. And so again, this is like another thing that like this is why we call it sex, right? Because that's like if we think of weaving, we think of a thread and a thread going into penetrating into another one or being received by another, right? Like the knots coming together. It's really beautiful. But you're speaking about pleasure, and sometimes we'll categorize that only as sex, right? But this practice of tantra is such an epic thing because you can hold the pleasure longer as you prepare yourself for this. Even in sex, you can actually allow that orgasm to be that thing that just continues to offer more to you without shutting it down. Because we do train ourselves often to shut it down. So I just wanted to throw that in there because it's just such a beautiful, another part of our bodies that speaks to us and that we get to connect to more and more. It's like for me, there is no, literally, there's just no shame around sex, thank God. Like I don't even understand fully how,
yeah.
except when you look into my astrology, our Venus is in Scorpio. We got a lot of placements in Scorpio. It's like we're very comfortable with the intimacy, but it's because I got to look into myself first. And so I think that's powerful, a little powerful reminder. But this is so beautiful what you're saying about your experience in this and you recognizing up to what point is your capacity of pleasure in this? Wow.
Right. Right. Thank you for that, bringing that in. One of my other mentors, Reverend Brianna Lynn, who has the Liberation Mystery School, which is a really powerful place, but she speaks to orgasm at its radical aliveness, right? Like my ability to experience living fully, and it's intense. I watch dogs and they go to the bathroom and then they like have an erection. I'm like, oh, or smelling the plants and like full erection, just smell. I'm like, dude, that's orgasm. That's radical aliveness. That's being in tune with the senses. Like,
yeah,
like,
I'm like, all the blood is rushing there because it's like, oh, we got so hard and wet with this.
like, and it's Mother Nature. So I just love the inquiry of pleasure as it relates to the simple things, which I do this because I don't think there's anything simple about this epic novel that I get to hold that came from a whole world. And I don't think there's anything simple about me choosing to not do work right now and sit with this person, for example, at the place where I was at, Bali Ayurgrama. Well, make note of it. Bali Ayurgrama is a beautiful facility. And the other piece that I really learned there was actually navigating balance, like work-life balance or work-rest balance, because I was there to work. I was there holding space for Westerners who were coming, and I was also getting my own treatment done. And inherently, if I'm doing panchakarma, if I'm doing Virechana, I need to be relaxed. My nervous system needs to be relaxed. I can walk outside. I can play and hang out with the cows, the most peaceful cows in the freaking world. And I also have work to do, hold space, create content, and be like a bit of a middle woman. So that was like the first
So
week.
incredible.
It was amazing. And I was like, I don't know how to balance this. I can't relax. I feel like I need to schedule things. I need to schedule interviews. I need to do this. And so I finally got to a place of deep, deep trust. And that was slowing down. Like I needed to slow down, of course. Trusting I can have an 2-hour long conversation with this person who just had treatment and just needs to be felt and seen. And I'll still get that other stuff done. And that relationship to me, to time, right? I could sink into the pleasure of being with that person, and that expanded, because if here, like we have a time, like I gotta go do work, this and that, like, sure, if I'm thinking about what I have to do in the next hour, that's constriction, that's my body bracing. And then now I'm performing and fawning to hold space for this person. So the biggest lessons was trust, sinking into pleasure in the simple things that are actually a miracle, and balancing.
That is so incredible because I'm thinking about, right, in order for us to enjoy pleasure at another level in the sexual experience, often women, we get to learn to really actually be in the relax mode so that we can receive. We can actually receive that, like when we're being penetrated, right? It's like such a beautiful thing. And then bringing the masculine energy in, right? Like within yourself, your relationship to time, to past, present, and future. And you learning to, woman, to me, this was only layers of health that you were bringing into your experience. You were practicing layers of health in a super holistic way. Like you've already said from the beginning, that's the invitation you've already created for yourself. And like you are actually constantly in the practice of it. So that's epic. Like so many blessings to you for sharing this experience with us, because you sharing with us is like, it's an investment you've made in yourself, but then we get to learn from that too. This simplicity, like you said, we overlook simplicity because it's called simple. But to me, that is literally where the richness is. It's where the magic happens. It's in the simple, right? We combine the simple ingredients. You're speaking about all the elements, and yeah, like earth, all the chemical components you could think of, but oh, that still gets to play with plasma, still gets to play with air, right? Still gets to play with the ethers. It all still has to play with one another. So we are all of it. And when we remember that, we bring in this more of understanding how to create that harmony, right? That resonance in that song that we are, in that music that we are.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that all together. I'll just say one last thing about Ayurveda, if that's okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, please.
If anyone feels like they're curious about Ayurveda and they've heard a lot of things, there's a lot of misconceptions out there, and we didn't really touch upon too much of the principles of Ayurveda. I'm aware of that. because it is a whole world. But if you wanted to get, your feet wet in that sense, I would say start to tune into your senses, right? Start to tune into what is bitter. How do I experience a bitter taste? How do I experience heaviness? When do I experience? Just get curious. Like you were saying, curiosity is the biggest thing. What am I feeling in terms of my senses, my qualities? How do I experience sweet? What's my relationship to it? You can do this like just voice note at night or journal something at night, like how I experience qualities of my food. What was my relationship to what was on my plate? And that's a good place to start. The other place is if you're dealing with something chronic, find a practitioner that you can trust. You must find someone, if you're looking for a doctor, that please look for BAMS at minimum, Bachelor of Ayurvedic Medicine and Surgery, and how long they've been practicing. That's huge. So there's so much out there because Ayurveda can be easily sold and made it to be a commodity like yoga. And that's really what I'm trying to avoid. Jessica, the doctor I work with, we're trying to avoid is what has happened to yoga in the West to happen to Ayurveda, which kind of already is happening. We're really trying to do it in a way that's like, this is a healthcare system. And she's also trained in Western medicine. So it's like, how do we understand both and move forward properly? So be very, very vigilant and don't just go with the first person that you see if you're dealing with something chronic. And if you want to study, you can go to like Charaka Samhita online. That's a free resource. Always mindful, like different translations, right? We've just started to translate Sanskrit and English like less than 50 years ago. British colonialism just ended less than 80 years ago. So there's still a lot of work to come back to the integral roots and heal the trauma that's happened. So you could look at Charaka Samhita online, taking everything with a grain of salt, get curious about yourself, and try to enjoy the simple things, the process of it. If you notice you're moving really, really fast and it's like seems like a little bit of a shame spiral or anything like that, that's when we really, really need to take a step back. There's nothing more, I think, damaging than like the shame spiral because it's out of this present moment. It doesn't actually exist. It's not real, and it's just creating a future. It's not real, but it's creating a future that's unhealthy.
It's a story that can be reframed. It doesn't have to stay in that same place. I've watched it over and over and over again get reframed. The shame and the guilt, and then it gets cleared. And then you're able to move forward in life in such a beautiful and rich way.
Yeah.
Oh my God, woman, I'm going to ask you to send me those links so I can put that all down below here so you guys could connect to this to find Veronica. I'll have her Instagram down here, her website. Is there any other place I need to put down here?
No, right now those are the best places. Instagram, website, and if you want to chat about any of this, you have questions, because I know it's like really opening up a huge box of curiosity, feel free to reach out. I always love to connect.
I love that. And if you want to come back for a part two, if you want to share some actual like principles, you are invited. But woman, that is up to you because I know you are full.
Cool. Yeah, I would love that. I would love that. We're going to do, I usually do 2 cleanses, group cleanses a year for the fall and the spring. This year, I've just done one-on-ones because really wanted to get into the customization. But we're going to have a group integration, like cleanse and integration coming up in the next few months. The program that yeah, it's really sweet. It's really sweet. I've mostly been doing one-on-ones, but everyone's like, I need to keep doing this. And to learn the principles, the program I have is about 12 months. You can do it 12 weeks, which is 6 months. You can do it faster.
Or is it 12 weeks? Isn't it 3 months?
12 weeks is 3 months. Yes. I'm sorry. 6 months is if you want to do it slower, which is preferred. But a lot of people, you know, are like, I want to do it quick. And it's like, okay, we'll do
No,
it.
the I'm over here recommending the 6 months because you won't feel overwhelmed. You'll
Exactly.
feel the enjoyment of it.
Right, the pleasure in the learning. So if you want to chew on more of the actual principles, like the principles, this is Ayurveda embodied. Mhm.
Wow. Veronica, thank you for sharing all of this. This is so beautiful. I look forward to connecting with you again. And oh my God, like, thank you for all of it.
Oh my gosh, I love you so much. Thank you for having me. You're such a joy. You're such a light. I'm just really grateful to be in your space.